friends, welcome back to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I am your host, Jamie Vaughn. Today, I'm super excited to have my friend, Cynthia Ryan, as my guest. Cynthia is always seeking ways to combine her broadly based experience and skill set with needs and situations on the fly. She is a cancer survivor, stage 3 triple negative breast cancer, formerly on the St. Mary's Hospital Cancer Committee, advocate for getting a second opinion, FEMA trained National Critical Incident spokesperson, writer, editor, communications manager for companies and print media, Whole Foods plant based vegan eater, cook, and recipe developer. She's also a photovoltaic electric vehicle advocate and former chair of the Electric Auto Association of Northern Nevada. Well, welcome, Cynthia. I am so thrilled that you are here with me today. I just feel honored. And you and I have known each other for about a year, really. We've been talking quite frequently throughout my breast cancer journey. And I met you through my good friend Rhonda. You were her stepmom, and she connected us together because I really wanted to learn more from you because I knew that you had breast cancer and that you were also a plant-based vegan eater. And I wanted to learn more about what kind of nutrition I could put into my own body. And I wanted to learn more about why it's important. So, welcome. I'm so thrilled that you're here. How are you doing?
So happy to be here because, these are messages that we just feel compelled to share, to pay our experience forward because we've been so fortunate. We benefited from the experience of a lot of people who went before us.
Yeah, that's true. And when I first was diagnosed on June 11th of 2022, I remember sending a message to one of my friends who had breast cancer a few years prior. And she said, "You just wait, Jamie." She says, "You're going to find out this is a sisterhood of all sisterhoods." And she
Yeah.
was right. I can't tell you how many people have reached out to me and have been so helpful. And again, you were one of them. I believe you said you had breast cancer, 21 years ago?
Well,
Appro
I was diagnosed in 2002.
Okay. Can you share your journey with us and even maybe some differences that you're seeing between when you had breast cancer versus today?
Well, it just simply started like it does with a lot of women, a routine mammogram. In the exam room, check the doctor's fingers running around on your breast, and he noticed something in air quotes and sent me right to get a mammogram. He said he had noticed something in my left breast. The tumor was actually in my right breast. But anyway, I go for the mammogram, and yes, they found something. And they sent me to a surgeon, not an oncologist, not an oncological surgeon, but a general surgeon, who will do your appendectomy. Yeah, he knew a lot about breast cancer, not. And he says, "Oh, yeah, don't worry. We've caught it early. Go out to the scheduler and we'll do a mastectomy by the end of the week." Oh, all right. Wrong. Couldn't have been more wrong. But talking about how we reach out to people and the profound difference it can make. I got home and I remembered a name, somebody I knew whose wife was going through breast cancer. So I called him. He was writing for the Gazette Journal at the time. And he told me the most important thing I've ever heard in my life. Go get a second opinion. And his wife was down in Houston at University of Texas MD Anderson Cancer Center. And I was on an airplane by the end of the week. And wow, got down there, and when they heard what had been planned up here, they were appalled, not surprised necessarily, because they heard that a lot, I think. And they did all their own testing, and they found that no, it wasn't early stage, and no, it wasn't small. And given the facts, the real facts of my tumor, to go directly to surgery would have been exactly out of step with the national guidelines. Well, it wasn't a lump in that sense. It was a lobular carcinoma that they had missed for a long time, probably because of my dense breast tissue. They don't show up well on mammograms. And it was a triple negative tumor, ER, HER2 negative, which requires a very different type of treatment. And talking about differences between then and now, as you and I have talked about, there just wasn't a good understanding in places like Reno about Ken's breast tissue. The conversation hadn't started yet.
Yeah, that's pretty scary too. Luckily, you had the wherewithal to reach out to your friend and be on that path of getting second opinions, which I know that is one of your biggest pieces of advice for people who are diagnosed with breast cancer and any cancer for that matter. But you had to learn in a way that you could have seriously gone down a path that would have completely changed the trajectory of your recovery and your treatment and all of that. So I'm glad
Absolutely.
that you got that second opinion. I hear very good things about MD Anderson. I have several friends who've gone to MD Anderson and they've got their stuff together for sure.
They're the number one cancer center in the world, Houston Medical Center, which is the largest one on the planet. You can sit in the 10th floor of your hotel, and as you look out and around, it's nothing but medical. It's
Yeah.
amazing.
I
And
have a
their
friend
whole
of mine who goes there regularly and she takes
really
pictures from her hotel room. 2 friends actually who have taken pictures from their hotel room saying, "There I am." So
yeah,
that's pretty comforting.
it really is. And that's where I first learned about a multidisciplinary team approach. You're not just seeing one doctor
Mhm,
in isolation. I would go down there for an appointment. My oncologist would see me, breast oncologist, not a general oncologist.
mhm.
She would see me, and then the rest of the team would come in. I mean, the guy that was going to do the radiation, the nutritionist, the psychologist, the surgeon, everything. They would all
Yeah.
come in, examine me, talk to me. Then they'd go across the hall and confer. And she had to defend her case every single time.
Good, good. Yeah, it's really comforting when your doctors communicate with each other. I've experienced some situations this year where, "Wait a minute, didn't you talk to so and so? Why am I telling you this? Why don't you already know this?"
In places like Reno that, where you're going to a practice on in one part of town, and they're not necessarily communicating with the other people you're
Mhm,
gonna have to deal with, and even vis-a-vis the tumor board. I've sat in on tumor boards at
mhm.
St. Mary's back in the day when I was on the cancer committee, and they're trying, but it's just not the same as going across the hall and everybody after they've seen you.
Do you think it's because they don't have enough people here?
It's partly that, I suppose, but it's just the way our for-profit medical system
Mm,
works.
mhm.
MD Anderson is not for profit. They're an educational institution, and they don't have to worry about billable time.
I do thank you for putting that piece of advice out there to advocate for yourself, number 1, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later, but also getting that second opinion. I just think that asking questions, and even if you're a pain in the ass, if you feel like you are, ask those questions anyway, even if it's just for clarification, because a lot of times you as the patient see things and feel things that the doctors do not. So thank you for
Let me relate one little episode, not about me, but about a neighbor. She came running over one evening and she lifts up her blouse and says, "Feel this," in her breast, because I had already gone through cancer. There was something there. Of course, it could have been all kinds of things, but She said, I'm going to make an appointment. Will you come with me? Sure. Okay. Power numbers and all that. Got to her doctor appointment about a week later, and he does an exam, and he starts telling her about how just come back and we'll excise the tumor and yeah, you'll be fine. I said, well, do you think you might want to consider this, this, and this? Also, I'm trying to not be a jerk,
Right.
but still. And he looked at me and he says, oh, you're one of those that thinks that you can just look things up on the internet and you know more than I do. And I went, oh, okay. And she was just the kind of person who was not going to advocate for herself. And she went with what he said. There you go.
So what
What can
happened
you
to
do?
her?
She died of cancer. It metastasized to her brain and she passed away several years later, but it was nasty in between.
I'm sorry to hear that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's very frustrating, Cynthia. I do believe that I don't even know what to say about what that doctor said to you.
And I heard that
And
time after time when I was a member of the St. Mary's On With Life group, breast cancer group, time and time again. And you just have to sit there in the meetings and hear these women go, but I don't want to leave town. And my doctor, he's so nice. I really like him. And you've just heard the most horrible things. And you can just support people and go, okay, I'm here for you, whatever you need and however you want to do it.
yeah, I think that there might be some doctors that have quite an ego. I have run across doctors who don't have an ego. They definitely know their stuff, but there are some that are like, I don't know. I don't know what is going on with you. We need to send you to a specialist or whatever it is. And even as an educator of 20 years, I got to a point in my career that when students would question me, and I'm the professional, right? I have the education. I know how to teach English or social studies or whatever it is. But I got to a point where if a student questioned me about something and I didn't know, maybe, or maybe I thought, oh, well, that's a really interesting way to look at it. I always said something to the student like, wow, I hadn't even thought about it that way. Let's explore that. Let's look that up. Let's try that or whatever it is. But I really think that there are some people who cannot lower their, or whether they think it's lowering their guard or whatever it is, and listen to someone that might be right and or might be at least looking into. And so I encourage people just as much as you probably do, to still ask those questions and be one of those people.
Well, from a medical person's perspective, I was good friends with a doctor who at that time was chief medical officer at St. Mary's. He called me on his way home when he had just gotten the diagnosis. He was in tears. He said, can I come over? Yeah, come on by. He had esophageal cancer and pretty advanced at that. They wanted to immediately do surgery here, and that would have involved removing part of his jaw. He says, that will end my practicing medicine here and well, anywhere. And I said, well, here's what I suggest. He went to UCSF, he went to UCLA, and then he went to MD Anderson. Now, this is a doctor.
Mhm.
And he ended up at MD Anderson, but it could have been any of the other two. And he got a good diagnosis and a treatment plan that he came back to Reno and got his treatment here. while he was in the chemo chair, his doctor friends would come by to see how he was doing, and they were dismissive. Well, that's not going to work. That's not what we would have recommended. Hmm. He survived his cancer and
And did
continued to practice medicine with a
good,
full intact jaw.
right. So he probably turned into even a little bit of a different doctor himself
He
as
was
far
the
as
one
his
that
thought
had
process.
St. Mary's reach out to me and put me on the cancer committee.
I love it. Yeah, and those kind of life-changing decisions, I would imagine that he probably told his patients or other people to get a second opinion and maybe even a third opinion. All right, good.
Exactly.
Well, you're one smart cookie. One of the things that really have learned a lot from you and have thoroughly enjoyed learning about. Now, granted, during chemo, it was really hard because my thought process was different and taste buds and
Oh, yeah.
the energy to actually cook something, but I was
What
still
is
learning a lot. But what is plant-based eating? What is it all those years ago that encouraged you to change the way you were eating? Where did it connect to?
it's complicated, but I'm a small woman, small boned, as the saying goes. And I was never heavy until I hit my late 30s. And I ballooned up to 164 pounds, and I'm only 5'3". And I was getting really concerned. I was tired all the time. I couldn't walk down the street without being winded. And that's just not working for me. And so I knew I had to do something. And at that time, you could go to nutrition counseling up at the UNR Medical School. So I went up there and they got me started on the right path. But it still didn't quite get there. We're big climate warriors here. And I know that there's a role played by eating animals. And plus, I love animals. I don't want to eat my friend. And so I became vegetarian. But then when I saw the Forks Over Knives documentary and then the Game Changers, my world flipped. And it just wasn't a stretch to go the rest of the way. And my husband saw it too, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm on board."
I watched the Forks Over Knives. I've watched them in the past, but I've never quite made the leap 100% into vegan or plant-based eating. At this point in my life, I'm more immersed in it than I ever have been in my life, and I've learned a lot about our diet and how it connects to cancer. So, at some point
Yeah.
you learned a lot about how to keep cancer away, right? By what we're consuming. What is your experience with that?
I started reading a lot of studies about the connections between, first of all, being overweight and hormonally driven cancers, because there's just an absolute correlation there. When my overweight oncologist at MD Anderson, she and I were talking about it, she started losing weight. She took it that seriously because she has a family history of breast cancer. And I went, boy, if Marjorie is concerned about this, I think I better get on board. So I started reading all the research I could get my hands on. And this isn't a long arc. Research doesn't exist in isolation. You have to look at it over time and as one thing informs the next. Fine. The consensus now is pretty clear that being overweight essentially drives hormonally driven cancers. And the pathology report after they removed my tumor did indicate, even though I was characterized as a triple negative breast cancer, there were some ER positive cells there, which is why she put me on tamoxifen
Mhm.
for a year. But eating and being overweight could cause a recurrence of the cancer. It's really that simple. I don't want to go there again.
Right.
It's pretty clear cut, at least for me.
So it's pretty clear cut for me too. There are situations where I'm in a place where the only thing there is to really eat is chicken or whatever. But I will
Yeah.
tell you that I actually have lost my taste for meats. I think it's because I've been eating mostly plant-based, and I will tell you that before I got cancer, about a year and a half prior, I also was overweight. I am 5'5" I think I was up to 173 pounds or something like that, heaviest I've ever been. I had
Mhm.
lost 33 pounds about a year and a half before I found out I had cancer. So by the time I got the cancer or found out about it anyway, I had been I was healthy, and I know that healthy people can get cancer as well. It's silly to
Sure.
say that only unhealthy, overweight, right? Well, we know that's not true. We know that healthy bodies can get cancer, but I often wonder what was going on in my body when I was overweight, if that was the start of what was to come, but it's neither here nor there. We can't really pinpoint that, but I did feel really healthy by this time last year. The program that I was on, I was eating all these fuelings that were vegan and didn't have any meat in them or anything like that. But then I was having lean and green meals, whether it be the greens with chicken or fish or whatever it was. So, one of the things that a lot of people say about plant based diets is that you can't get enough protein. Can you address that
Yeah.
misunderstanding?
Yeah. Yeah. Like every other vegan, we've heard that. I've even got a t-shirt that says, yes, I get plenty of protein. Thank you. To say it in the simplest possible terms, if you're getting enough calories, you're getting enough protein. And it really is that simple. And, my husband and I, we try and have beans every day if we're not having some of the meat analogs. And I try and keep those to a minimum because they are highly processed. Or soy product. You don't have to plan every meal rigorously and be a nutritionist. You don't have to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually pretty simple, and because I even thought that at the beginning, it's like, "Oh my gosh, I don't have time to learn this, that, and change everything." But no, what I learned is that if you have all the staples that you need for plant-based eating, and which I do, I bought them all. So now I'm like, "Okay, now I need to use them." But like nutritional yeast and just all these different things that are the basic items that
Mhm.
you use in plant-based eating, then it is actually pretty simple, and then it becomes really fun. I like one of your pieces of advice to take some beans and freeze them in plastic baggies, and then you can pull them out and put them in any kind of meal. And I will say that you have a wonderful blog. Is it Simply Cynthia?
Simply by Cynthia.
We'll have that in the show notes because for my audience, you've got to go check out this blog that Cynthia has together. She's got wonderful recipes among other topics that she talks about, but she posts all of her recipes and things that she's eating every day. And I actually did have an opportunity to talk to your husband, Ron, about that the other night when we were at dinner. And he said that he really truly believes, like he's 90, what is he, 90?
He'll be 92 in September.
92. And that
Yeah.
guy, he's like rocking. He says that he really truly believes that his blood tests have come back really good. He really truly believes it's because he doesn't eat meat.
He got rid of his AFib.
Yeah.
It's
That's a big
one.
deal. That's a huge
It is
deal.
a big deal. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, what a cute man he is. You're just such a cute couple, and I just really am inspired by both of you, and I truly believe that what I've learned about diet and cancer and any illness for that matter is so much because of you. There's a huge misunderstanding. You had brought up soy a little while ago. I had someone who insinuated at the very beginning of my diagnosis that because I had eaten soy, that might be why I had cancer. And so, can you clear up any misunderstandings about that? Because I know that it was such a big scare. like in
Oh,
the
I've heard
last
it.
20 years or whatever.
Yeah, I've heard that lots from people too. I've spent lots of time in Asia, particularly Japan and China. They eat a lot of soy there. That's home base for soy products. And yet the women there have the lowest rates of breast cancer in the world and hormonally
Interesting.
driven cancers. Yeah, you can't have it both ways. So, yeah, it's been rigorously investigated for more than 25 years. And the science just says unequivocally that soy is protective against hormonally driven cancers. But scientists aren't good at having a megaphone and being social media influencers, so they don't get hurt as much. It's just that
Right.
simple.
Where did all that I feel like it was a lot of propaganda. Where did all that come from, do you think?
I don't think it's propaganda so much as misunderstanding. Words that are similar sounding. Soy contains phytoestrogens, plant based estrogens, and then our bodies produce estrogen. But a phytoestrogen and estrogen produced by our ovaries, for example, they're not the same thing.
Oh,
They
okay.
sound similar, but not the same. And people get it confused. They're busy, they're not biologists.
But who's pushing that? Who was pushing that? Because I feel like there is a faction out there that seemed to be pushing that because I remember when all of that news came out and it was like, "Oh my god, don't eat soy." So I stopped drinking soy milk or eating any kind of soy. And then when I went in to talk to my surgeon at the beginning of my diagnosis, I specifically asked her, and my surgeon seemed to be quite up on nutrition because she spent time talking to me about nutrition and what I should and should not be eating. And I asked her, "Do you think that soy played any kind of role in my cancer?" And she looked at me and she said, "Soy is the lowest of the low concerns we even have."
I think people, they misunderstand the science, the basic nomenclature, and then they're looking for clicks. And unfortunately, that's what works. That's what people hear. You just got to step back occasionally and question your own assumptions.
Thank you for clearing that up. I eat tofu, and that's where we get a lot of our protein as well. So, to wrap this up, Cynthia, we talked about self advocating, we talked about getting second opinions. Is there any other piece of advice that you can give to people who have been just first diagnosed or to caregivers?
For the person that's just been diagnosed, know that for at least the first few days, it's going to be a shit show. There's just no way around that. Give yourself time every day to get angry, to cry, swear, set a timer. That's what I used to do. Set a 15-minute timer and go get crazy for 15 minutes. Ding. Okay. Other people have gotten through this. You're not doing this by yourself. Other people have broken trail and they're on the other side of it, and you will probably get on the other side of it too. But if you're in a constant state of panic, you can't think clearly. And
Right.
to that, I would say meditation. I found an app that works for me because I'm not a woo kind of person. I needed something that was more straightforward, that is awesome. And I set
That's
aside
the
time.
waking up. That's the
Yeah,
waking
the
up app,
waking up
right?
app with Sam Harris. And he has a lot of the other kind of folk on his thing, and you can tap into those if that's what works for you, speaks to you. But you've got to find a way to calm your own fear. You can't operate effectively from fear. I learned that in emergency management. Doesn't work.
Oh, it can make you sicker too. I will say that in the beginning, as you say, it was a shit show for me. really felt like I was being sucked up into another crazy dimension.
It's
Go to
going to
Reiki.
church every day. Go to church every day.
Yeah,
Do
exactly.
whatever
Whatever
you get
works.
out in nature. Take a walk,
Yes.
whatever it
Yes.
takes.
Yes. And that's what I started doing. I was like, okay, I went for a walk. My husband got me out right after chemo treatments and we went walking and it was really hard, but I did it anyway. And I listened to the Waking Up app and the Aura app. I went to Reiki. I was in therapy pretty much every week and I still see
Mhm.
my therapist because lo and behold, you don't just get over stuff after you're done with cancer. You still are
No.
healing for a long period of time. And so I still go to therapy. I still do some meditation. This podcast alone is wonderful for my healing journey, and I'm sure for a lot of others. So I'm hopeful that people find peace and information just through these conversations, your story, your journey, and clearing up misunderstandings about plant based eating, misunderstandings about soy, and giving that great advice. So thank you. And I will have your blog in the show notes. You might even send over a link to Waking Up so
Oh,
that we
yeah.
can share that with our audience. Such a great app. Loved it.
It's a free trial.
Yeah, it is a free trial, and that's what got me hooked. Go
One
ahead.
other link I want you to put on there is to the Ruby, RUXBE /
Yes.
Forks Over Knives course, and also the Blue Zones course, Dan Buettner's Blue Zones course. I'm doing that
Ke
one now.
Yeah,
Okay.
those are great resources. Again, thank you very much. And to my audience, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Test Those Breasts. I really hope that you can find some time to rate this show and please share. That is very helpful. As many people as we can get it out to, that would mean the world to me. And I will see you on the next episode of Test Those Breasts.